life of her child.
For the thankful smiles we engender when we provide food to the hungry and shelter for the homeless.
And knowing that the Rotary Foundation's efforts will shape a peaceful tomorrow for all the children of the world.
Could you dedicate yourself to a worthy cause? Could you go the distance to keep a child healthy? Could you travel across the globe to help eliminate polio? A Rotary member could. We're dedicated to connecting children with vaccinations and ending polio worldwide. Could you help change the world? Rotary. Humanity in motion.
President Boyd, you've encouraged Rotarians to lead the way by acting as role models. What do you mean by this?
When we developed the theme of Lead the Way, I really thought of it in two areas. One of it related to the personal responsibility of Rotarians, and the second, the responsibility of clubs. And I think when we talk vocational service, we're talking that responsibility for Rotarians as individuals. I think we live in a world where the headlines are generally taken by those who have not maintained the proper standards. We see politicians, businessmen and sportsmen who do not really live by the standards that we want for our communities. And if you live by standards, then maybe you don't hit the headlines. But I think as Rotarians, we have a responsibility to show that integrity and a sense of ethics and honesty really are important. And the only way we can lead the way to do this is by setting an example. So I hope that lead the way means to each individual Rotarian that they have a personal responsibility. And that to me is vocational service. It's personal service. It's a service that will flow over into their vocations. I hope that Rotarians will display the four-way test on their office desk or their office wall and let the world know that those are the standards that they work by. And I think in business and in community and in their families, it's important.
Can you give us some examples on how to promote the values of both occupation and ethics among Rotarians?
I think the first responsibility really falls on every individual Rotarian. I think it's important that they themselves live by the standards that have been so important to Rotary. I think that then, if you are prepared to live by those standards, then you should always wear your Rotary reel on your lapel. You should be making a statement to the community that you, in your business life, but also in your private life, believe in those things which are important. And as I suggested, the use of the four-way test, the public display of the four-way test, I think is a statement by Rotarians of the way they want to act.
What would you suggest Rotarians do specifically to help raise awareness in the public field about the commitment to service?
It's interesting that when you go back into the history of Rotary, you find in the early days of Rotary there was really only vocational service. For many, many years, Rotarians were encouraged to serve on their own. It was 1923 before it was even agreed that clubs could collectively, that the members of clubs could collectively come together to give service. So Rotary was built on a history of vocational service and the personal service of Rotarians. And there was a time, maybe 30 years ago, when we really moved away from the importance of vocational service, when we forgot how important that was to distinguish Rotary from any other organisation that you could belong to. Many organisations give community service, but what makes Rotary special is that we combine community service and vocational service and international service. And so vocational service, to me, is an essential part of Rotary, but so is community service, because the clubs exist to serve in their own communities. And it is one of the wonderful opportunities of Rotary that we can move internationally and serve on a wider basis.
How can Rotary clubs make sure that this avenue of service figures into their service goals?
I think for a start they have got to recognise, just basically recognise that vocational service is important. I think that you can, by the speakers that you have at your club, let members know how important it is to always act ethically. I think you can do it by encouraging club members to subscribe to the four-way test. I think that we can do it by encouraging members to set standards within their own community, and sometimes this can be in going to schools. There are many clubs that run essay competitions or poster competitions that have public speaking on ethical issues for young people, and I think this is part of encouraging standards within the community. That's part of vocational service, and we do it in youth leadership training too, in our RILA courses that we do for youth leadership. We are showing young people how it's important, not that you just go into the world to make a living, but you do it in an appropriate way which recognises the right of everybody in the community. And that sense of unselfishness, I think, is very important. There are so many aspects of what we do in Rotary that really involve the setting of standards and the use of our vocation for the service of humanity.
Following many of the recent scandals in the business world, Rotarians and even non-Rotarians who are business leaders have cited the importance of the four-way test. How have you personally applied this test in your own business dealings?
On my desk, I have a copy of the four-way test. And what is special to me about that little piece of plastic is that it came from Harold Thomas, who was the president of Rotary International in 1959-1960, the only New Zealander to have ever held that role before I was selected. And to me, while it says something to me and reminds me of Harold Thomas, it also reminds me very much of the importance of the four-way test. And I and every other Rotarian in their business life and in their personal life are going to find challenges. And I think that the four-way test is certainly not old-fashioned. It's just as relevant today as it has ever been.
Some people have said that the four-way test is overly simplistic in its approach to ethical behavior. How would you respond specifically to those people?
I don't think that by complicating the issue that it becomes any clearer. In one of my recent editorials in the Rotary magazines, I quoted from past President Richard Evans of Rotary International, who said that every ethical and moral question that we face can be answered by just asking the simple question, is it right? And his comment was that if it doesn't meet that test, then all the other questions just don't count. So I don't think that our statement in our four-way test is too short. I think it's still certainly very relevant. And I think those moral issues which really face every one of us, the hard decisions that we have to take in life, the four-way test is as important as it's ever been.